Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. So glad you can join me for another episode of Love and Abuse. If this is your first time, welcome to the show. And just want to let you know that all the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. So just going to address something really quick. Somebody asked me in a review, they reviewed the show, and they asked, can I get a transcript? I offer transcripts. Yes, you can get a transcript. They will be in their raw format. They will not be necessarily checked for grammar and spelling and accuracy, but the system I use is probably about 99% accurate. So if you would like a transcript, head over to loveandabuse.com and go to, I think it's more, and then contact, and just send me a message. Hey, can I get a transcript for this episode? And I'm happy to provide it to you. So feel free to do that. And in the future, there's going to be a way to download those transcripts without reaching out to me. So I just wanted to give you a way to do that in case you are looking for that. So those are available. Just wanted to let you know. And so today, what I would like to address is someone's email that I think is going to be helpful for you if you are interested in developing a new relationship, or you want to know why emotionally abusive relationships flourish. They begin and they flourish, they continue and they grow, and how that happens. I've talked about this before. I've talked about how emotional abuse happens. Probably every single episode. How does it happen? It's just behaviors that continue to exist in a relationship, and the relationship continues. In order to understand what I just said, the idea is to think about bad behavior in a relationship and ask yourself, is this bad behavior enough to leave? That's a great question for yourself. Is this bad behavior enough to leave the relationship? There's a problem with that question, however. The problem is some people have such a high toleration point that the bad behavior is never enough to leave. So there is a problem with that question that I posed. I posed this question, even though there's a problem with it, because it's important to understand how you might be deceiving yourself. You might be deceiving yourself if you ask that question, is this bad enough to leave? So I'm not saying that you have to leave a relationship too. I don't come on here to promote divorce, separation, or separating families. I don't promote any of that. I like to promote healthy communication. Let's have a healthy, safe, non-toxic conversation about what's happening so that it doesn't go that route. I would rather keep a relationship together if there's a chance that the toxic behavior can go away. I think relationships can be wonderful. I love being in a relationship, as many of the people that listen to this show do as well. In fact, I think if you're listening to this show, you probably do love being in a relationship if you're getting treated with kindness and respect. If you're not, then you might be feeling like maybe a relationship isn't the greatest thing. Well, they can be terrible with the wrong person, or at least any person that's doing bad behavior, being harmful, being emotionally abusive. So that's what I talk about in this show, as you know. We want to make sure that we stay out of toxic situations because this is a term I use every now and then. The radiation from the relationship seeps into your mind and body, and if you want to go deeper, spirituality, your soul, that toxicity, that relationship radiation will get you emotionally ill and even physically ill over months and years. This is like being in a radioactive environment. If you're at Chernobyl for a long period of time where they had that huge nuclear accident, that radiation is going to seep into you and you will get sick. I don't know if they've cleaned up Chernobyl or not, but you get the idea. If you're around radiation for too long, it seeps in. I think it's the exact same thing with relationship radiation. When there's toxicity in your relationship, it seeps into your mind and body, spirit and soul. And when it does that, it starts to disintegrate you from the inside out. I apologize for that description, but it's almost exactly what people who are in these abusive relationships for a long time tell me. They reach out and they tell me, I feel like I'm a shell of my former self. What does that mean? That means whatever was inside is gone. It disintegrates, it disappears. And so what do you have left? Well, when you're a shell, that means that either someone else is going to put what they want into you, or you have to put what you want into you. If you're experiencing the toxicity of an emotionally abusive relationship and you are feeling this disintegration inside of you, then it's important that you refill it with something nurturing and loving and compassionate. This is self-care, self-love, self-compassion. And when you do that, you become abundant in that self-care so that somebody else can't push their emotionally abusive behavior inside of you because there won't be enough room. I love myself enough to not allow that into my mind, my body, my soul, and my spirit. Whatever beliefs you have, however you describe it. And when you hold this love and respect and compassion for yourself, that toxic stuff can't make its way in. The problem is, as you may know, maybe not, but the problem is that we're so compassionate sometimes. We're so forgiving. We're so loving and caring and generous with our kindness, is that we give people the benefit of the doubt. We let them make, quote, mistakes. We let them do bad behavior because we have several thoughts about that. We think things to ourselves that maybe that bad behavior wasn't exactly what we thought it was. Or maybe we're going to give them some leeway. We're going to give them a little bit of room to act in a way that is not supportive of you or the relationship. And we sometimes do that because we feel bad, we feel sorry, we feel compassion, we feel a bunch of good stuff, a bunch of good feelings and good thoughts that, yes, you, I believe, should have. In general, healthy people carry these good thoughts and feelings around with them. Healthy people do feel bad for others. They do feel compassion. They want to support, and they want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And when they do that, when you're doing that with the right person, a healthy person, it is received, it is welcomed, it is cherished. When you do it with the wrong person, or someone that doesn't necessarily have your best interest in mind, they take advantage of you. They take advantage of your compassion. They take advantage of your kindness. And that's the kind of stuff that we got to make sure it doesn't get into a very fulfilled, self-loving mind and body. Probably not the best way to say it, but it's so full that toxic stuff can't get in. I don't know if that's 100% possible, but I do know that you at least have to do things in a certain way and have to think in a certain way in order for you to do the best you can. I think that's the best you can do is the best you can do. But you got to make it better and better all the time so that you don't repeat mistakes and you don't allow toxic behavior and toxic people into your life. And if they're in your life, maybe it's time to slowly wean them out by rebuilding who you are, taking whatever has been taken away from you and refilling it with something that you want in there. So let me read this email, and I've got some notes here I want to go over regarding what I'm talking about today. The email goes, not only am I a victim, I realize I may have some behaviors that I need to change as well. I think a good topic is talking about stopping the repeating patterns of engaging with emotionally abusive relationships. I feel like I am flypaper for all flies. I never see the warning signs until I'm about 3 months in, and maybe that's my issue. I need to resolve my past and experiences, but I feel like a magnet to emotional abusers. My biggest concern is that I will turn into an emotional abuser myself in defense. And then that's it. That's all she wrote. And I want to comment on that. First of all, thank you for writing that. Sorry you are going through that. That is challenging, and I'm sure everyone that's listening can certainly relate to this, or at least the people that continue getting in to situations that they don't want to be in. And it sounds like you don't want to be in these relationships anymore. So how do I, you didn't say this, but how do I fix myself so it doesn't happen? Or how do I avoid these people? So I'm going to go over some of my notes here that talk about what we might say to ourselves when we are starting a relationship, when we're in a relationship that allows the emotional abuse to flourish. It allows it to continue and even grow inside the relationship. I think this is probably an important episode for those, especially who are starting fresh or thinking about starting another relationship. The first thing I want to say is I did create an episode, probably one of the first episodes of this show, called Don't Dismiss the Red Flags of Manipulation and Deception. If you listen to that episode, you'll learn what I have outlined as red flags for any relationship, and that'll be helpful as well. But let me give you some of my thoughts on what this person wrote. The first thing I want to comment on is when you're developing a relationship with someone, whenever they do something that bothers you or raises a concern, I want you to see that as an opportunity to prevent long-term suffering for both of you. This is an opportunity to talk about how the relationship can continue in a healthy way instead of a harmful way. It's an opportunity to avoid emotional abuse altogether. And what normally happens in the emotionally abusive relationship that flourishes in a harmful way is that something bothers you or raises a concern, and you dismiss it. You don't talk about it. You don't bring it up. You don't get to the bottom of it. You just dismiss it and move on. And dismiss may be the wrong word. Maybe you have other thoughts about it. In fact, I'm going to tell you what thoughts you might have, just in case you relate to this. It can be very helpful so that you don't get stuck in the trap of self-sabotage. Self-sabotaging thoughts will cause an emotionally abusive relationship to grow and prosper, and we don't want that. We want to remove the toxic behavior from the relationship before it ever gets that far. And with some people, good, healthy people that actually care about you and care about growing the relationship to make it more long-term, healthy people are going to want to do this with you. Unhealthy people, however you want to define that, toxic people, people that do bad behavior, what they're going to do is prevent the relationship from moving forward in a healthy way. And so when you have two healthy people, emotionally healthy people that want to grow and prosper a good relationship and a happy relationship, you're both going to work at it. You're both going to work together. And just keep that in mind as I move through my notes here, because what I'm going to do is mention a thought process that you might go through, or different thoughts that you might have at the outset of behavior that annoys, irritates, or bothers you. So the other person does something that annoys, irritates, or bothers you, and now you have that opportunity I'm talking about. You have an opportunity to nip this in the bud. You can take care of this right now. Let's talk about it right now. There's an opportunity. Let's not let this pass by. There are reasons we do that. There are reasons that it passes by. And I'm going to tell you those reasons right now. Let me scroll down my notes here. All right. So the common reasons that emotional abuse can develop after something like that happens, somebody does something that annoys, irritates, or bothers you in some way, is that you think something like, I don't want to jump to conclusions. That can happen to the best of us. I don't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I misunderstood. I just don't want to jump to conclusions. Okay. My quick answer to that is that's why you have to get the facts. This is your opportunity to get the facts. I don't want to jump to conclusions. Well, don't. Just get the facts. What did you mean by that? It's always a good question. Why did you say that? What did you mean by that? What are you saying? Let's talk about this, because that didn't feel very good when you said that or did that. Just get the facts. All right. The next thing you might think is, I don't want to be the bad guy. I'll say this, you won't be the bad guy if you get the facts. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm going to say this over and over again, but the point is, you can't be the bad guy because you won't jump to conclusions, because you'll get the facts. How do you get the facts? Same thing. What did you mean by that? I don't understand. What are you saying? Find out what they mean. Find out where they go with it. Do they welcome you to inquire about that? That's something you want to keep in mind. Are they welcoming this conversation? If my girlfriend stopped after I did or said something, and she said, what do you mean by that? And I could tell by the tone of her voice that she was annoyed, irritated, or bothered in some way, I would say, uh-oh, what did I say? What did I do? How did you take that? I would immediately feel like I want to fix this. Like, whoa, I don't like the way she sounds. I don't want her to misinterpret what I said or did. So let's fix this right away, because I want to keep this relationship with her. I want to make sure she's happy. I want to make sure that she knows that she is important to me. So of course I'm going to say, what happened? What did you hear? And she's going to say something like, well, when you said, and then she's going to say, it made me feel such and such, or are you calling me an idiot? She's going to say something that she interpreted that highlighted something I said. So that's going to be important for me as someone who cares about her and cares about the relationship to have an opportunity to respond. This is that opportunity. She's giving me that opportunity. What do you mean by that? What's going on? And when she does that, I'm not going to look at her and go, wow, she's being a bad guy. Well, I mean, guy, girl, whatever. She's being the bad person. I'm not going to say that, because I'm going to be humble enough to not sit in righteousness. I'm not going to look at her and go, well, I'm right about everything, so she's way off. Whatever is going on in her head is her problem. I'm not going to deal with it. Righteousness can get us in trouble. I'm not going to be that righteous person. And I'm trying to convey what a healthier conversation might be. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm saying that I try to practice this whenever I can. If she says something that irritates me or ticks me off, I might ask her, what did you mean by that? Or I might even go further and say, hey, look, what you just said really hurt or really made me angry. Or maybe we'll go past that and say, look, what you're saying is wrong. And then we'll have a real conversation. And maybe it'll turn into an argument. I don't know. But there should be a level of equality, a level of fairness in whatever conversation or heated conversation or argument that you have. There should be that level of give and take. It shouldn't be all one person's fault and the other person is 100% right. It can't be one person that's 100% at fault and the other person that can do no wrong. It could be that. I mean, the facts could point to that. If one person is 100% wrong, absolutely. There could be facts that support that. But the bigger picture is the relationship here, and the relationship requires two people to work at it. So there's always a role. There's always a level of responsibility for both people to work on things. And I hear this over and over again with emotionally abusive relationships. There's often one person that believes they can do no wrong. And that's when it gets toxic. That's when you have a real problem and it's no longer a relationship. It's more of a control situation, a power situation where somebody wants all the power and wants to take your power away. So we want to be careful about that. So let me get back to the list of things that you might think, the reasons that emotional abuse will develop in a relationship. We talked about saying to yourself, I don't want to jump to conclusions. That's why you get the facts. I don't want to be the bad guy. And you won't be the bad guy if you don't jump to a conclusion because you got the facts, because you take the opportunity to talk about it. The next one is, I might be imagining things. Like maybe I misinterpreted this. Maybe I'm imagining it. Again, broken record, that's why you get the facts. If you think you're imagining it, let's talk about it. If my girlfriend said, look, I saw you talking to someone and I got these weird feelings. What does that mean? Why are you talking to that person? If she said anything like that, which would be a little unusual in our relationship because there's a lot of trust, but if she said anything like that, I would think, wow, what's going on here? You know, what are you thinking? Are you worried about something? And we'd have a conversation about it because she gave me the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm giving her the opportunity to express what's on her mind. And a relationship that allows for those opportunities will thrive in a good way. But this is what we do. We say something like, I must be imagining it. I must be misinterpreting. I must be misperceiving this situation. And because you say that, you let it slide. This is what happens in all of these things. I don't want to jump to conclusions, so you might let it slide. I don't want to be the bad guy, so I'll let it slide. I might be imagining this, so I'm going to let it slide. Every time you let it slide, it builds, and this is the part of the disintegration process inside of you. Well, they said something that really made me upset, but maybe I misinterpreted it. So I'm going to swallow that upset. I'm going to repress it. And there's going to be a little bit of that I carry around with me from this point on. That little bit of upset. And if you don't know already, as you do this day after week after month after year, that upset compounds inside of you. Those repressed negative emotions compound. And they get worse and worse and worse. The more you repress, the more you let things slide. I'm just explaining how the emotionally abusive relationship can develop over time. So those are three things. Let me get to the fourth one. You might think, they've never acted this way before, so it must be a misunderstanding. I don't want to ruin this. Have you ever thought about that? I've got something great here. I don't want to ruin it. Well, let me say this. You can't ruin something by wanting to know what someone else really meant. You can't do it. Because asking them should be a normal relationship hurdle that you should both be happy to leap over together. Because the person who cares about you wants to clear things up as soon as possible. Just like I was saying, I care about my girlfriend, so I want to clear this up as soon as possible. I want her to feel good about us. The person who thinks they're going to ruin it by saying something is usually acting from a place of fear instead of self-love. I think that's an important concept to understand. If you are afraid that you're going to ruin something that you believe is mostly good, it's coming from a place of fear. I mean, even the word, I'm afraid of losing something good. Afraid is a word of fear. If you are coming from a place of fear instead of self-love, you're going to continue getting more fearful. This is, again, an important concept, because if you are making decisions based on fear, you build fear. You amplify fear inside of you. And it continues to compound, and it continues to grow, and it continues to eat away at you. That's all part of the disintegration process. Don't let that fear eat away at you, which, we're working on this, right? We're working on trying not to lose our power because of fear, and lose our power because somebody else is taking it from us. We want to keep our power, and keeping our power also includes not making decisions from fear. So self-love is saying, I love and respect myself so much that I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens to me. I may not be 100% successful, but I'm going to try. That means I'm going to find out what they meant when they said or did whatever. That's the opportunity for that conversation I'm talking about. Again, it's getting the facts. And I already know what a lot of people are thinking. They're thinking, yes, but when I try to get the facts, they twist it. They turn it around. They make it all about me. This is a red flag. It's a warning sign. If they're doing that, then that continues to grow and thrive as well. Whatever they are, I don't want to say it this way, but I'm going to. Whatever they're getting away with, whatever you let slide, and I'm not saying you're letting everything slide. I'm just saying whatever happens in the relationship over and over again is what thrives. That's what flourishes. That's what amplifies and grows and continues to grow. So if you're feeling love and support and generosity over and over again, that thrives. If you're feeling like they keep turning it around on you, you always have to defend and explain yourself, you're always feeling guilty or responsible for everything that goes wrong in the relationship, that's what thrives. That's no fun. As you know, that's not fun. And that's why when I say that you should think, I love and respect myself so much, I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens to me. That's why when I say that, I realize that even when you try to do that, it can be difficult or impossible with certain people. Some people are very crafty, very adept at turning things around and twisting things. But this is also a sign. This is also something that you need to be aware of when somebody does that. When they're not allowing healthy communication, and they're not listening, and they're not saying things like when you say something and they reply, so what you're saying is this, and that hurts you or that bothers you. If you're not getting any type of reply like that, where you don't hear them listening or validating or confirming something that you said, even if they disagree with it, if you don't hear any of that, then what you're getting is probably the opposite, or something toxic. You're getting something that's not conducive to a happy, healthy, successful, long-term relationship. And because of that, what thrives? That thrives, that kind of behavior. And with that behavior, how do you feel? Because how you feel with that behavior also is what amplifies. It's also what compounds. So you have to be careful about this stuff, and it can be very under the radar. All of these thoughts and feelings that you have, and these behaviors that continue to slip under your radar, can all be part of the disintegration process. I know none of this is happy to hear, but I want you to be aware. I want you to have some healthy skepticism with anyone. I want you to continue moving forward, showing love and respect and kindness and all the good stuff that you have to other people, and also be aware that some people know how to use those things against you. And when you're aware of that, you will make sure that you take these opportunities to have these healthy conversations. And when you can't have a healthy conversation, you need to see that as a part of the problem as well. All right, before I go on to the next thought you might have, or the next reason that you might give yourself or might think, I want to reiterate the self-love versus fear. When you have self-love, you say, I love and respect myself so much, I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens to me. I'm going to find out what they meant when they said or did X. That's when you have a conversation that hopefully leads to something productive. Now, fear, when you make fear-based decisions, what you're essentially saying is, I'm so afraid of losing this thing. I don't want to be alone, and we have so many great things going for us. If I say anything, it could all go down the toilet. That is a fear-based mentality, that you're so afraid of losing something that you make decisions based on that. And my suggestion is to always make decisions based on love and respect for yourself, and of course, love and respect for others. But you do that starting by being self-compassionate, self-caring, self-loving, self-kind, self-respect. You start by doing that in yourself so your foundation is solid. You may not feel that way now. You may not have all of that for you. I hope you do. I hope you love yourself so damn much that you won't let any toxic behavior in. I hope you're like my ex-wife was. My ex-wife, I remember the first, I think it was a month or two of our relationship. She taught me a lot about my behavior back then and how I was showing up in the relationship. And I remember the very first thing that came out of her mouth when I did something that was offensive to her. She was in the other room and I had music playing in the bedroom. I think I was packing or doing something. And I went over and turned it up. I was really enjoying the music. And she walks down the hall and she looks at me. And I looked at her face and she looked upset and I couldn't tell what happened. I don't know what was going on. So I went over and turned the music down and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm really upset that when I told you to turn the music down, you turned it up. That made me upset." Or she might have said angry. That made me angry. And I didn't hear her ask that, and I just coincidentally turned it up. Couldn't hear anything because I had the music on, but I coincidentally turned it up, and she came down the hall and told me, when I told you to turn it down and you turned it up, I really felt hurt by that. And I looked at her and I said, "I did not even hear you do that. And if I did, I would definitely have turned it down. I am so sorry. I was so sorry I did that. And like I said, I didn't hear you. So it definitely was not intentional." And then she softened and she realized, oh, it was a mistake. It wasn't intentional. But she taught me something that day. She taught me that it was important that as soon as you feel some sort of anger, upset, irritation, or bother in some way, that it's important to address it as soon as possible. And that's what she did. She addressed it right away. This was a brand new relationship that we were in. And instead of letting it slide and telling herself, well, maybe it's a misunderstanding, maybe he didn't hear me, she felt it. She felt this irritation, annoyance, or upset. She walked down the hall. She waited for me to turn down the music, and she addressed it right away. And when she did, I was able to clear it up. We had the opportunity to fix it right then and there, and we got past it. And it wasn't something that lingered. We didn't carry it with us. She didn't carry any upset about it. I didn't carry any fear about it because we were able to straighten it out right away. So what I learned is that it's so important to address these things right away, as soon as possible, so that you can get past the idea of jumping to conclusions or imagining things or misinterpreting things. You just bypassed all of that and just got the facts. She also expressed herself. That's something that I hadn't experienced in any other relationship before that. Someone who could stand up and express herself, even at the risk of causing some upset or even losing the relationship. Because if I was a real jerk, I would have said, well, I can listen to my music. I didn't hear you, and it's your fault because you should have known that I had the music high enough and I couldn't hear you. So why are you jumping to conclusions, you BIT? I could have jumped to conclusions myself and thought she was just being awful. But I wasn't like that. I wanted to know if I did something wrong because I wanted the relationship to flourish and prosper. I wanted to enjoy my time with her. And so that's what I learned, is that it's important to address these things. And unfortunately, in our marriage, she let a lot of my behavior slide after that, a lot of my bad behavior. That wasn't intentional at all, but later on I had a lot of bad behavior, and she would let that stuff slide. And I'm definitely not blaming her. I did bad behavior, and if she had said something, we could have addressed it, but it was me. It was my self-righteousness. It was me believing I could do no wrong. And she let those things slide because of probably some of the stuff I'm talking about here. Because when you see a lot of good qualities in someone, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. And that's what destroyed our relationship. My bad behavior destroyed our relationship. And her giving me the benefit of the doubt also destroyed my relationship. And I'm really being careful here because I do not want to make it sound like I'm blaming her at all. This was something that I did, I created. But I had to come to a healed place inside of me to get to that point where I believed it was my fault, that I knew it was my fault, that I finally figured out that I was doing bad behavior. And I didn't realize that until she wanted to separate and finally get a divorce. And that's when I put all the pieces together. And many, many years ago, I learned the hard way, as a lot of us do. We learn the hard way. We have to get through these times, learn our lessons, and hopefully take these lessons with us so we don't do the same mistakes again. And it works both ways. People who do bad behavior, they have to learn that they're probably the common denominator for all the problems in the relationship or in multiple relationships that keep failing. And the person that gets into bad relationships, there's probably something that is happening over and over again, just like this person wrote who said, I feel like I'm flypaper and I'm attracting all these flies. Yes, there's probably something you're doing, and that's what I'm going over today. And that's what I'm trying to share today to help you avoid attracting flies and getting into bad situations, or trying to help you create the best environment possible so that a good relationship can develop out of it. Because I don't want you to enable your own misery. That's the bottom line to all of this. Do not enable your own misery. That doesn't mean you're asking for it. It doesn't mean it's your fault. It's just a matter of understanding what you might let slide under your radar. It's a very unconscious thing sometimes. And this is why I'm making it conscious, putting it in your awareness, giving you a heads up, just in case you didn't understand this or didn't see it before. So let me give you one more reason emotional abuse develops. And it's another thing that you say to yourself. You might say, I don't want to sound petty or nitpicky. That's another thing, is that we think that we're complaining too much or making mountains out of molehills. Well, here's my thought on that. If something bothers you, why wouldn't you say something? I would rather say something than allow someone to continue to bother, annoy, or irritate me when I have the opportunity to let them know that something bothers, annoys, or irritates me. Because I guarantee you, if somebody truly cares about you, they're going to want to know if something they're doing is bothering you. Now, if they're annoyed that you're annoyed or irritated by something they're doing, and they don't change their behavior, then here's the problem. It doesn't bother them that it bothers you. Let me repeat that. If they're annoyed or irritated because you're annoyed or irritated by something they're doing, and they don't change their behavior, then it doesn't bother them that it bothers you. That says a lot. If somebody's doing something that bothers you or angers you or upsets you in any way, and it doesn't bother them that it bothers you, that speaks volumes. And I'm just going to leave it at that. That says quite a lot. Like, why wouldn't you be bothered that it bothers me? And somebody might say, well, I'm upset at you. They might have that conversation, but at least that's a conversation. They might have a self-defense mechanism or a coping mechanism or an emotional trigger or whatever, PTSD, that kicks in. That's absolutely possible. They could say something like that, but at least, again, that's a conversation. I would much rather have a conversation where somebody says, well, I'm not bothered by it because I'm mad at you. I would rather have somebody say they're mad at me than mistreat me. I want to know, express these things to me. I told my girlfriend when we first started, like our first year together, she would repress things. She would hide things. She probably had some of these thoughts. I don't want to jump to conclusions, or I don't want to get upset. I don't want to make him upset. That's another one I didn't even add to my list here. I don't want to make him upset. So she had these thoughts that when I did or said something that upset her, and I believe was unintentional, but she would never talk to me about it. So I didn't even know I upset her. All I got was very aloof responses, very apathetic behavior from her. Not even apathetic, it was just dismissive. It was, I'm ignoring me. It was neglect. And I felt neglected. I said to her, you don't even look at me when I walk in the room. What's going on? And she said, nothing. You don't even kiss me anymore. It's like a robot. What's going on? She said, well, nothing, I'm working on stuff. I said, you've been this way for a couple weeks now. What is going on? Just tell me. And she said, well, when you said that thing 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, I was really upset that you said that. And I said, you were upset about that? I didn't even know. I didn't even know you were upset about that. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. Let's talk about that. And she goes, well, I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to upset you and I didn't want to, stir the pot or rock the boat. And I remember exactly what I said. And she always tells her friends this too. She goes, he said to me, I would rather have you yell at me and make me angry than hold it in and never bring it up. And she tells her friends that because she said that was a pivotal moment in our relationship. She said, he told me that day to just yell at him and just get it out. And who cares if I get angry? That's exactly what I said. I said, I don't care if you make me angry. I mean, I'd rather have you get angry at me than neglect me for weeks. This is something that's very hard to do in a relationship, is when you're being neglected. It feels terrible. And she said, are you sure? I said, yes, I would rather have you be upset with me and just get it out, put it on the table. Let's discuss this. And she said, well, okay. She was so skeptical. And I said, good. Next time you're upset at me for something, hopefully never, but it happens. Next time you're upset with me, let's talk about it. Bring it up. And the next time she was, maybe a few months later, she, I forget where we were, but she stopped me and she said, you remember when you said that I could talk to you about anything and tell you if I'm upset or not? And I said, yes, what's going on? Tell me. I wasn't aggressive. I just said, yes, absolutely. Let's talk about whatever is going on. What's on your mind? And she said it, and it was a misunderstanding. And I said, oh, that's how you took it? I'm so sorry. I didn't scream at her. I didn't do anything like that, because the bigger picture was the relationship. The bigger picture was us supporting each other and caring about each other and caring about growing this relationship and having the best intentions for each other. And so she put it out there, put it on the table. And I said, that's what you've been upset about. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's certainly not what I meant. This is what I meant. Or I forget what I said, but that's pretty much how it went. And we got through it. And after that, she got more and more comfortable expressing this stuff to me. And what it did for both of us is remove the emotional triggers that we can sometimes carry around. It removes the traumatic lingering, if you want to call it that it becomes a trigger every time the subject comes up. We just put it out there, talked about it, got through it, because, and this is pretty much how I feel today, if we can't get through it, and it lingers as some sort of trigger inside of us, and we can't even talk about it, I'd rather not have a relationship where we are avoiding each other and feeling triggered all the time. I would rather not have a relationship that carries around emotional triggers. I would rather not have that kind of relationship because it's too traumatic. And I know that's really finalizing it. It's being very absolute. And of course, I don't mean that 100%. We would have a conversation about things. We would try to get through things. We would go to couples counseling if we had to. We would take the steps needed, but we would work on it together. But my point is, carrying around this emotional trauma, these triggers, can create such an unsettling, unfinished feeling inside of you. It can also be full of stress and tension, and you just don't know how to react or respond to each other because you might set each other off. And so I think it was important for us to have the philosophy of talking about the hard truths, even if it risked the relationship, because what it does is it cleans out all the toxic stuff, all the emotional triggers that can build up over time if they're not cleared up. And clearing that stuff up through a relationship really helps a healthier environment prosper and thrive. So I gave you a lot to chew on. I hope this episode has been helpful, and I wish you much strength and healing for whatever you're going through, and share this with others that might benefit too. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. Use the workbook to help you determine if you're in an emotionally abusive relationship and give you the tools to pinpoint the specific unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. If you're in a difficult relationship and you want to know what your next steps should be, the workbook will help you make decisions that are right for you. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. If you've discovered that you are doing emotionally abusive behavior and you'd like to change that about yourself, sign up for the Healed Being program over at healedbeing.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. Thanks again for joining me. We'll talk soon.